Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Good Morning Eastvale. My name is Molly Kortson, and I'm the city's communications officer. And today we have a very special and exciting guest, Congresswoman Norma Torres. Thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Thank you for the opportunity to say hello to my new constituents in Eastvale.
So I'm going to start by reading a little bio for you, and then I'll let you, if you want to add anything in, you're welcome to.
Absolutely.
So Congresswoman Norma J. Torres represents California's 35th Congressional District, which includes Montclair, Ontario, and Pomona, and parts of Eastvale, Chino Hills, Fontana, Rancho Cucamonga, and Upland. That's a lot. She previously served as a state senator, assembly member, and as a mayor and council member for the city of Pomona. Throughout her career in elected office, she has worked to make government more responsive to the needs of the Inland Empire residents. Congresswoman Torres has been instrumental in securing the 92880 zip code for us, and she's only been representing us for less than a year, which is awesome. Torres immigrated to the United States from Guatemala at age 5 and is a longtime resident of the Inland Empire. She resides in Pomona with her husband, Louis, and their 2 sons, Robert and Matthew. Her 3rd son, Christopher, is an Air Force veteran. So thank you so much for joining us once again. And if you have anything else you want to add, feel free.
No, it's just, I think I would say that Eastvale is such a great city that it is the only place that I can get my husband to come with me to events. There's so many family-oriented activities that in the short time that I have been representing, I think he has been here 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
With my grandchildren.
Yes.
Also.
Okay. So Emily and I were trying to think earlier. We're like, we saw you with 2 little kids. Are those your sons? We couldn't remember. I was like, I feel like I've seen you with little kids.
Yes.
But okay. So they were your grandkids.
Yes. My grandbaby.
Okay. Awesome. So I want to ask you some fun get to know yous. We do have some hard hitting questions, but we want to get to know you a little bit fun first. So, okay. I know you probably travel a lot. I know you're probably driving a lot, flying back and forth. So what do you do on flights to like pass the long hours?
Yes. On most days, I don't like to hook up to the Wi-Fi. I feel like traveling, it's so hard on my lower back that I try to it's my time. I can catch up on some sleep. I put my earphones and I try to do this so nobody talks to me. There's a lot of business people that travel back and forth to DC. So sometimes, I'm lucky enough to have someone sitting next to me from an adjacent city who wants to, talk the entire 5 hours. I try to avoid that as much as I can.
That's a long time.
You're trapped.
Yes. No, for sure. You're like, okay, thank you, but
I know.
I'll see you at work.
Right. I'll see you at work. And right now, I'll just try to enjoy some time reading and just try to catch up on napping.
I like that. You said, I just want to mind my business. I just want to sit here. I like that. I'm like a talker, and I always talk to people on flights, and my friends and family when I travel, they're like, please stop talking to everybody. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying. So, okay. So next question. If you could like go back in time and you had to do like a different career path, what would you do instead?
I would have been an attorney, I think.
Okay.
I would have practiced law. For me, when I was in high school, that is, the path that I wanted to take. I would probably be a public defender of some sort. Yeah.
Okay. I like that. That's a good one. And then, okay, last question. This is like kind of random, but I just like to ask people. If you could eliminate one thing from your daily routine, what would you want to eliminate?
Driving.
Okay. No commutes.
No commutes. It is part of what I, appreciated a little bit about COVID. We didn't have to go out and drive. And when we did, there was not a lot of traffic, but it could be very isolating too.
Yeah.
I wish we had public transportation that was dependable and affordable, not just for me, but for all of my constituents. I think we spent so much time on the road behind the wheel that is not good for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I first started working here, I lived like over an hour away because I liked my area a lot. And I was like, it's fine, I'll do the commute. And after like 2 months, I was like, I just have to move because it's so taxing and it's so much wasted time. And I was like, I like the area. It's good, like affordable, but I was like, it's not it's so hard on like your quality of life that it was like
Yes.
not even worth the savings. You know?
Right. But, you know, when I was a 911 dispatcher working in Los Angeles, that commute helped me with my mental health.
Yeah. Like
It helped me realize and prepare for what was next, right? Being a mother of 3 sons, being a wife, being a team mom for, you know, all the soccer teams. That was one person. And going into work, Kellogg Hill for me was, I needed to be a different person, no matter, you know, which direction I was traveling.
Yeah, going in, you're kind of getting ready, driving home, you're like decompressing too from like the day, you're getting ready to, you know, step into a new role. So that does make sense. I feel like I wish like a happy medium. I think it's like 20 minutes maybe. Like you can decompress a little, listen to some songs, and then you get out. So, okay, well, thank you for doing our little get to know yous. I want to jump into some more serious questions. So as we mentioned in your bio, you are from Guatemala, but you've lived here in the Inland Empire for like most of your life. So can you talk about how your like life experiences and being here in the Inland Empire, how has that like impacted and affected the way that you now serve the community?
Yes. When my parents sent me to the U.S. to live with my father's oldest brother, he had 2 brothers that lived in the U.S. One was serving in the U.S. Navy, and the other one was working and living in Whittier and married. And I went to live with him since he was, you know, he had a home, he had a wife, and a stable place for me to live. There was a civil war in Guatemala, but when I, you know, got married and started having children, we wanted to buy a home, and the only place we could afford to live was Pomona. At that time, we were renting an apartment in San Gabriel Valley in Almani, and I remember telling my realtor anywhere but Pomona, because we had heard all these stories, right? And being a young family, I'm very proud that both, you know, my husband and I prioritized buying a home, and that we were able to save enough money. We didn't have a lot of help. We were on our own, both of us. And we were able to buy our first home in our early 20s, which is unheard of.
Yeah, no, especially our generation.
Yes, and it says a lot about where we are and the lack of affordable housing and the lack of quality housing for the young people that are turning 18 and want to move on their own. You know, I had a stepmom. I had to be on my own at 18.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, but I saw too recently, I was like looking through your Instagram actually, and I saw that you had just gone back to Guatemala. So do you visit frequently? Is it like a place you miss? Like how often are you out there?
I do not. I have very little memories of my life there. I was so young. And I did go back at the request of President Biden. They had an inauguration of their new president. And it's a very difficult time there. So he sent a delegation. I was, you know, one of the delegation members that went there to be a part of that peaceful transfer of power. I focus a lot of my international work on the Northern Triangle region, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, because they have such a huge impact on our southern border. And I feel like if we are going to provide humanitarian assistance to people in that region, we have to oversee how, you know, hard-earned taxpayers' dollars are being spent in the region. We want to reach the people that we want to help. We don't necessarily want to enrich, you know, those people that are forcing, you know, them to flee out of the country. So I do a lot of work, which has caught the attention of very tough leaders. And then I have had several threats against my life, my family, my home, you know, has been graffitied. You know, at one point, Capitol Police had to spend a week just parked in front of my house. MS-13 gang members were targeting me. But I feel very strongly about doing that work. The oversight that has to happen, you know, and the accountability of ensuring that our funding is going to the right places.
Well, I mean, obviously that sounds so horrific. I'm so sorry you've had to go through that. But how do you kind of, I guess, keep doing this? Like, there's so much at stake all the time and you've slowly moved up throughout your career. So, in your brain, how are you like, no, it's still worth it. I'm going to keep going. Like, what do you do?
Yes, some days are better than others. I focus on my district. I am a member on the Appropriations Committee, which is a very important committee. It's like the checkbook of the federal government for the young people listening today. It is like your Zelle account. We oversee federal spending and appropriate money to programs across the U.S. and internationally. So that work is really important, and I think that's what keeps me returning. It took me 14 years to get to Congress. When I was first elected as a local city councilwoman, I understood very early that in order for the local communities to balance their budgets, some of our communities are heavily dependent on that CDBG funding that comes from the federal government. So I wanted to be there to be a part of the assistance that our communities need to thrive. Eastvale is the second youngest city in the state of California. You are thriving. Your mayor and city council were just wonderful to me and my staff. After the redistricting, we reached out unofficially and said, I want to be ready on day one. And we can't do that without your participation. And very, very quickly, they invited us officially to visit, gave us a tour, and gave us a list of priorities, which is, what I needed to focus on. That's why we were able to deliver, working with Congressman Calvert to ensure that the zip code is something that the community is asking, not because, they just want to be unique, but because it's impacting their deliveries and how they see their communities. So we worked on that very, very quickly and delivered on that. We also delivered on a grant, a community grant for $500,000. And, I see my job as I get to ask, what is your wish list? And I have to focus on that. And my job is to deliver the funding and then get out of the way. It's hard sometimes, right? As a former city councilwoman, some members of my community will never see me as anything more than their local representative, right? I have had the same phone number since the brick all of these years. So everyone has my cell phone.
From way back then, they're still calling you.
They're still calling. It saddens me that some folks wait until they see me at home to report crimes or to report certain things. When that is not my job anymore. I try to help them as much as I can, but it keeps me grounded.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think it's hard too you're transitioning so much up. But again, of course, those people who know you from way back when you're a city council member, they always kind of are going to see you in that light of, oh, well, we have her phone number and she's still in office. And I think a lot of the general public don't always understand the differentiation between each, kind of role and what are we responsible for. And I think even at the city, we have people reach out to us about, issues that are like for the school district or for the water district or they're for something else. But, there's a lot of different agencies. And so it can be totally confusing.
And for us, they want to drag us into these local community decisions. And it's hard to push back and say, you have an elected board, local officials that are here every single day. They are committed. This is not a full-time job for them. they don't get paid full-time, dollars to do this work. They're volunteers, and we have to give them the respect to do what's best. And really, that is not my lane. I try to respect that as much as I can.
Yeah, we are really fortunate. We have an amazing city council here, and our city manager too, Mark Warren. Yes. He is like so amazing. Yes. Everyone here at the city is really amazing. I've had such a good experience working here, but I also can say that on behalf of the city, we appreciate you so much, because I remember when we were working on redistricting, and immediately, like, I saw you, I met you, like, we knew who you were because you started coming to the events like immediately. Yeah. And we have seen you so consistently since, and you've made it out to the events, and you've come to the podcast and so many different things. So it's been really cool for our community. I think they see you as someone that's really reliable, and like at this, at the city staff level too, we see you like, oh, Congresswoman Norma Torres, we know she'll be there. If she said she's going to be there, we know that she will be. Yes. So we really appreciate that. But
Thank you.
I wanted to also ask you, because you have done so many different roles, do you want to talk a little bit about like your transition through each of those? And maybe if you're willing, maybe tell us which one's been your favorite, or if you've had any favorites.
Starting as a city councilwoman and winning my very first election by 75 votes, it was quite a challenge. Yeah. I broke my ankle 3 weeks before the election, rented a wheelchair, and had volunteers pushing me, and we were still going door to door. Oh my goodness. You can't replace that face-to-face contact with the people who you represent or you will represent. Yeah. Being reelected by 75% of the vote, being elected to the state legislature as an assemblywoman, and having to vote on 4 different budgets my first 30 days in office was horrible. The time I spent in Sacramento was some of the toughest periods of my life, because they had a huge deficit, a budget deficit. There were no good decisions, no good choices. We had to reduce our budget by a quarter. And that was really very difficult. At any one time, I would have people coming to my home, saying, please don't cut us, cut them, don't cut us, cut over there. And making those decisions was really hard. Leaving the state legislature with a $2 billion surplus, is something I'm very proud of. As hard as it was to get there, I was very proud that we created a rainy day fund, and we put policies and procedures in place to avoid getting into this terrible deficit again, which I'm so shocked about what's happening now. But being elected in Congress was something that was quite an experience. I no longer represent, just my district, right? People from all over the world will reach out to me on different issues. My international portfolio, like I say, I mostly focus on the Northern Triangle because that has the most impact on our southern border. But I also do a lot of work around narco trafficking. Okay. So I've traveled, a lot into the jungle in South America, throughout the Amazon, in Colombia. I have participated with our military and the Colombian military eradicating coca, the coca plant, and talking to farmers in very remote parts of the world, that people who never see law enforcement or their government, but yet we are there providing some assistance and giving them hope that the drug cartels are pushing them in this direction, but it's more beneficial for them to turn those coca plants into cacao. And everybody loves chocolate, and we want them and we want to support them in cultivating other crops.
Well, it's so cool to hear your experiences, because I was a political science major. So of course you're like learning about different levels of government. But I think the impression for most people, even myself included, throughout school is that Congress members, you're here doing only things on U.S. soil. And again, it goes back to trying to figure out like, who's really doing what and what jurisdiction. Yes. So I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that you're kind of all over the world, helping people. It's not just here. You're not just helping Pomona or just Eastvale. It's like you're literally helping the whole world.
Yes. I had an opportunity a year ago to go to Sudan and South Sudan. I'm only traveling to very difficult places. And but the impact of the war in Ukraine, the Russian war on Ukraine, and how that has impacted our humanitarian effort in eradicating, hunger, famine around the world. That experience was so sad. I'd never seen a child that was, for example, I saw this little 5-year-old at the time. My grandson was, a little over a year old, and they were about the same size and about the same weight. And that was so sad. Going into a very remote area of Sudan, where in the rainy season, they are completely, surrounded by water, and food assistance can't get there. So how grateful I am as an American, to when I need help, I can call 911 and I can, I have the, the honor of having law enforcement, a paramedic there, ready to help me. If I need food assistance, I can call a food bank and they have food there for me. Democracy really matters around the world, and having solid government officials that support democracy, I think, is so important. So,
I think too, traveling really obviously changes your worldview a lot. And over the last few years, I've traveled a bit, and I went to Nepal a few years ago. And I think, of course, it's a third world country. And when you see that level of like poverty, and they had a huge earthquake back in like 2010, and they still have not recovered since 2010. Right. And so when you see things like that, your worldview really shifts, and you're like, one, you become very grateful to be an American, of course. But I think when you see that stuff too, just even those tiny little like details of things that you take for granted of, if we had a big earthquake here or something, we wouldn't be in a, having our infrastructure broken for the next, 15 years. Like they would start rebuilding, and we would have those resources, and we would have people who are there working for us and fighting for us. And it's just so interesting to go to those different parts. And when people haven't had the opportunity to travel, I think you get very like in a certain mindset where you just you don't realize that we're in a really good spot. Do you want to talk about, maybe what has your experience been being like a woman and a woman of color? Do you have any advice to, young women who are interested in maybe doing something similar?
Right. Being a female in any leadership role is very, very difficult. And my advice to, young women is don't give up. You have to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be, everything that you are. You may be out of your comfort zone. That's okay. We just keep practicing, and we don't give up. My favorite role really in all of these positions that I held was being the mayor. And people always, ask, what do you mean? Congress is not like your favorite position? Like, well, it is. It's a very different job. And I get to, look at things globally instead of, more locally or regionally. But being mayor, you get the scissors. So, you get to do the ribbon cuttings. And as a mayor, you can direct someone in public works and say that pothole needs to be fixed. And within a few days, that pothole gets fixed. So you can see the immediate impact on what you want to do in your community. In my position now, it's really long term. When we look at the legislation that was passed in the last Congress, the 117th Congress, whether it's a CHIPS Act for, to promote manufacturing here in the U.S., the Inflation Reduction Act, or the infrastructure bill, those are bills that were passed that will be creating jobs for the next 10, 12 years. Not necessarily, immediately, but over the next 10, 12 years, there is a lot of money out there for our communities to begin to look at what is it that they want, what are some of the industries that they want to attract, and how do we work together to put that puzzle, together to ensure that we have the infrastructure to accommodate, how we want to grow.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was a political science major in college. And so when I was in school, I was like, oh, I'm going to go straight to DC. Like everyone wants to start at the top. But I think, like you were saying, local government is so cool because it's really like the boots on the ground work. And when I started interning for the city of Menifee when I was in college, I was like, man, this is the work that I like, because you're so there with the residents and the day-to-day and the community. And like you said, you do something and you immediately see the impact. You get to see how this program affected people or helped people. And obviously congressional work is so important too, but it's really cool when you get to be like the mayor or, local government staff, because you're here with the residents. Where I think obviously in like congressional work, you're so removed from them sometimes. So you're still doing things, but I think the residents, the communities, they don't always understand what you're doing. And they're like, what are you guys doing up there? So I could totally get why you say being the mayor was your favorite. So something I wanted to ask you, my final question. I know we talked about like the zip code initiative and the grants you've been working on. Is there anything else you're really focused on for the city of Eastvale? And maybe what are you doing to kind of work with and help our community?
Yes, I throughout, my life, I have been very focused on the young people in my community. We have, if I may, take this time to pitch the Youth Advisory Committee. I have so many very, very smart young people that are attending high school here and are part of my Youth Advisory Committee. They get to meet with my staff, with me once a month. They get to learn about the communities that I represent. And that you can graduate from that. You can go to college, because that is targeting high school students. You go to college and then you can come back as an intern in my office. I have had a paid internship program since day one. In Congress.
That's awesome.
Now we actually have a budget, that is a federal, allocation for interns. If you are in college, apply for one of these internships during the summer or the winter months. We will work with you. It's a $2,000 stipend for a semester or 6 weeks of work in either one of my offices. 20% of my staff, by the way, has come from one of those positions.
That's awesome.
My goal is, if Washington, D.C. is going to be run by a bunch of 26-year-olds, they should be 26-year-olds from the 35th Congressional District.
Yes, I like it. And well-trained. Well-trained 26-year-olds who are from our area, for sure.
Very, very proud. We try to keep one position open in Washington, in my Washington office, to allow that, great intern to have a place to call home for a year. And after a year, I'm like, okay, are you applying in other offices? Because we have to, have this position open for the next person. Yeah. And we have been very successful at getting them placed in other offices, including Senate offices.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Well, I think it's cool too, because Eastvale, we have like a pretty young staff compared to a lot of cities. And I worked at 2 cities before this, and I was like, by far the youngest by decades. Like nobody was even close to my age. So it's really cool to be at Eastvale, but I'm only here because I was a WRCOG like intern. And their whole thing is about like attracting and like retaining people to the region.
Right.
So they, we did internships, and then they're like, okay, so where are you going to apply? In the Inland Empire. Yes. And so many of us that I was in the fellowship with, there was 10 of us, we all work here in the IE, like in local government. And so it's really cool because we'll see each other at events, and, like back then we were all like in college and still so young. Not that we're not young now, but, even more young, but it's cool to see that we're all kind of here in the region. And so same thing up in DC, if we're getting people that are from our area and they're well trained and, they can kind of grow into those roles. That's the ideal.
Yes. In the 1 year that I represented Eastvale, we have had 2 interns, and both of them are working in an office in Washington, D.C.
That's so awesome.
Yes.
That's so awesome. So I want to ask you, I know I already said last question, but is there anything like while you're here, because obviously this is to give our residents like a behind the scenes look at sort of your life and what you do. Is there anything that you'd want to share that maybe, you know, people wouldn't know about you or your role?
Yes.
Pull back the curtain a little bit. Anything you want to share?
Yes. I love to get around the community. My husband and I love to hike and just take long walks around the community. He feels very strongly about me continuing to be grounded and to be approachable. So oftentimes you'll see me, you know, walking around shopping. I have a ponytail on and my jeans, tennis shoes. I want you to come up to me and talk to me. So don't be shy. I want to hear your opinion, whether we agree or disagree. I want you to take that opportunity if you see me at, you know, out and about, to just approach me and talk to me.
I love that. I love that you want to be approachable. And again, I feel like our community knows that if they need you, that you're there and that you are responsive. And your whole staff too. We've met so many of your staffers and everyone's been so nice, so approachable. It's like your whole team is great people. So thank you so much for always being so, you know, available to our community and so approachable to them.
Thank you.
So, and thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm so glad that we got you out here. I know you're so busy, but do you have anything else you want to share?
No, I look forward to continuing to attend all of those wonderful events, whether it's during the holidays or in the summertime. I very much enjoy being here with all of the young people. This is a very young city.
Yes, it is. We're so young. Our staff, the city itself.
The city itself.
The infrastructure, everything brand new, very young. So
yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. I know if anyone sees you now at all the events, I'm sure they will. Now that you guys know what she looks like, you're welcome to come up and talk to her. So thank you again.
Thank you
for coming on.
See you all very soon.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.